So Sean Penn is at it again. Look how he's dressed. So Sean Penn, well, let's just play it.
Thing I'd like to say is, having just returned from Ukraine about 10 days ago or so, is that the impact of President Biden's trip was extraordinary. I mean, that's extremely encouraging.
Yeah, it would have been nice if he actually visited someplace in the United States that needed help. Wouldn't that be something? Wouldn't that be extremely encouraging? So what they're showing here is video of his group called CORE. So Sean Penn has a nonprofit, and it's called CORE, and that's called an NGO, a non-governmental organization. It's like a charity,
right?
But they get money from the government. I'll guarantee you that his charity, his CORE, this non-governmental organization, is getting funded somewhere through the government. And so he gets all this money, and then they send him to places like Haiti, or they send him now to Ukraine. And he's just there to do propaganda for the war, and that's what he's doing. So here he is.
I think that one of the things that's concerned me, and I think that there's no question, but that they need more ammunition, more
war.
That's because they're winning so
We
hard?
need more war.
It's going so well.
What we need to do is prolong this war. Everyone knows how it's going to end except Sean Penn. Everyone knows how this war is going to end except Sean Penn.
Hold
and
on.
he wants to extend. So what he's doing is repeating CIA talking points.
But look at the Jimmy, we got a special report coming in. Sean Penn says the impact of Biden's trip is extraordinary. Whoa, thanks for special. What a special report.
Wow, it is extraordinary.
He's very special, all right.
Long-range precision weapons. And
wait, hang on. They need more ammunition, and what else?
They need more ammunition, more long-range precision weapons.
More long-range precision weapons. He's advocating for specific artillery in a war instead of arguing for peace talks.
They need long range. I wish they had long range. What did he say? Call it
artillery.
But he used us precision. They don't have that when they deliver the weapons. When we try to send the weapons, we have no long-range precision.
Yeah,
most of them go somewhere else.
They go to Africa. We don't know where they're going.
So we need about 70% over what we were going to send them, is what he's saying.
And yes, fighter jets.
Fighter jets. And fighter jets. So we should just give them a whole military to fight a war they provoked. So he doesn't, again, so if this is the first time you've ever seen my show or they never tell you what's really going on in Ukraine. Ukraine is an economic war by NATO that was provoked and started by NATO. How did they do it? They overthrew the government in Ukraine in 2014 and installed a puppet. And then the Russian speakers in the east part of Ukraine didn't want to go along with that. And then the Ukraine government started shelling those people. They had a peace agreement called the Minsk Accords. And the Ukraine government was supposed to stop shelling the Russian speakers in the eastern part of Ukraine. They never did. They killed 14 to 15,000 Russian-speaking Ukrainians in what's called the Donbass, the east part of Ukraine. And that's what provoked Russia to... One of the things that provoked Russia to invade to protect those people, also so that Ukraine would become demilitarized, so they wouldn't become a threat to Russia, just like we don't want Russia or Mexico or Canada to be a military threat to us. And if they got into an alliance with China or Russia, we would be upset about that, just like we did with the Cuban Missile Crisis. We almost started World War III over that. So they're doing the same thing right now with Ukraine. And so NATO keeps threatening to put Ukraine into NATO, which is crazy. And everybody from Noam Chomsky to Henry Kissinger and to secretaries of state and every administration has said that's crazy to put Ukraine into NATO. So we're doing everything we can to start this war, and we got it. And now we're doing everything we can to extend it. Sean Penn knows none of that. He knows none of that. He thinks the war started when Putin invaded the Donbass. That is not when the war started. Go ahead.
I forgot what it is.
Okay, sorry. So let's listen to more of this.
The issue really is that right now they're dying. Every day they're dying. So
we got to keep this going. There was a peace agreement last March. They had a peace agreement, and then NATO, the United States, killed the peace agreement because they don't want to stop this war. They want to bleed Russia. And in order to do that, you got to slaughter a bunch of Ukrainians. And they don't give a shit. And Sean Penn is here making sure more Ukrainians get slaughtered. And he's such a moron. He thinks he's helping those people.
Oh, now I remember. So we had the video of Zelensky himself saying they were never going to let him in NATO. So never mind NATO. They were just saying, just tell Russia.
Let's threaten it. So we piss off.
But we're not even going to put you in NATO.
Yes.
So that's really like dirty on a lot of levels.
What we're waiting for seems to still be attached to this, I would argue, overcautious concern related to nuclear weapons. Because for one thing, if we're going to...
So Sean Penn is telling you, don't worry about nuclear war. If someone starts a nuclear war, don't worry about that because we have to, that's just part of the price you have to pay. I'm not making this up. That's what he's saying. And I'm going to play it for, let's please play it.
Concern related to nuclear weapons because for one thing, if we're going to live in a world where a bully with nuclear weapons runs the show. There are...
Yeah, you know what country that is? Yeah. That would be the United States, fuckface, not Russia. The United States, we're occupying a third of Syria right next door. You know why? Because we're a nuclear power bully. We did the same thing to Iraq. We did the same thing to Libya.
How about his pal Hugo Chavez? That he still talks about how he's friends with him.
That's right.
He's friends with him.
We overthrew him.
I saw him, Bill Maher, talking about how Hugo, he still is like, yeah, well, Hugo was being threatened by, what did you say? He was being threatened by America?
So he doesn't know anything about anything. And he's advocating for more murder, being a tool of the CIA and the military-industrial complex. He's not helping. Sean is now a tool of evil and murder.
He's cautioning against caution.
Yes. He doesn't want you to worry about, we have to risk a nuclear war. Believe me, Russia will use a nuke if they think they're losing.
The only thing we have to fear is fear of nuclear war.
Don't be afraid of nuclear war. That's Sean Penn's message, is we can't be afraid of nuclear war. Otherwise, of course you should be afraid of nuclear war, and that should be paramount in every decision. Of course you should be afraid of nuclear war. He's saying we can't worry that someone's going to start a nuclear war. That's exactly what you should be worrying about, you fucking moron.
I mean, that freeze frame is not making him look smart. He looks like one of the guys from Deliverance in this in this video. Looks like the one that Burt Reynolds shot with an arrow.
Was a former intelligence officer I'd spoken to in Ukraine at one point. He said, he doesn't want to live in that world, and Ukraine won't. And so I just think we have to make a clear decision to start
World War III. To start World War III.
He spoke to a former intelligence officer. He talked
to some rando fucking guy inside Ukraine with a bias and an agenda, and now I'm here to tell you about it.
And Ukraine doesn't want to live that way. Oh, I care. Take all the money I have, please.
Saving lives, saving infrastructure, and what that means is supplying the Ukrainians. They have no interest in having Americans or others in the fight. They're ready to take the fight themselves. And their ability to transition on these platforms, be it the F-16s or when it comes to the Patriot, is not. I don't think there's been an honest conversation about how quickly they can transition. I think there's a lot.
Sean Penn is going to be here to let you know how fast that the military in Ukraine, without any training, can learn how to use a sophisticated missile system that takes months and months to figure out. And by the way, they don't have the spare part. They don't have anything.
It's like, you ever saw Battlefield Earth when they all learn how to do fighter jets to fight the aliens in like a day? It's like that.
In
the air about how long it takes out maintenance.
So now, where's Code Pink to call him out? That would be nice, right? Aren't anti-war organizations supposed to mock him now and tell him why he's wrong and that he's an actual evil person? Yeah, because he's doing evil.
Listen, if Ukraine doesn't win this war, I don't want to be alive. I don't even want to live in the world if this conflict doesn't go.
The Ukrainians
way.
won't.
All of that, but there are a lot of many ways in which that can be, sped up.
You could speed up any. So I love what this guy says. He says liberals are mad at Woody Harrelson, but they applaud this piece of shit.
Yeah. Wow.
That's the world we're living in. They're pro-war. Like, he's not embarrassed to do this. This would be like saying we got to arm the Vietnamese. We got to send more arms. We got to send more missiles to Vietnam. We got to send more long-range missiles. We got to send fighter jets. We got to send this stuff to Vietnam. That's what that. We got to send this to Iraq. Let's send it to Libya. Let's send this stuff to Afghanistan.
Don't worry. They don't want us there supervising what they do with it.
That's right. So if you said that about Vietnam, you've said that about Iraq, or you said that about Libya, or you said that about Afghanistan, or you said that about Syria, everybody would laugh you out of the room. But you're allowed to say that about Ukraine now.
But an intelligence officer told him.
But some rando intelligence officer.
You know how the intelligence that got us into Iraq, the thing that he thought was crazy of us to do?
Yeah. Well, I like what Spit and Venom says. He says, when calling out corporate greed and corrupt politicians gets people labeled conspiracy theorists that they did to Woody Harrelson, that's how you know the state-sponsored propaganda machine is working. Sean Penn loves war and vaccine mandates, so he's portrayed as a purveyor of truth and decency because he's a good boy. He's totally on board for the authoritarian COVID bullshit mandate stuff that has no scientific basis and is anti-worker. And he's now pro-war.
And he talks.
But the shit libs are upset at Woody Harrelson for telling you the truth about COVID.
I like that Sean Penn always sounds like he's about to cry at any second. Yes. His voice. That gives a lot of gravitas to it.
If you want to know what's really happening, Sean, this is what's really happening in Ukraine.
The NATO summit in Madrid was a big love-in for the supporters of the military-industrial complex. NATO is not a defence alliance. It's a war machine. Ask the people of Afghanistan, Iraq or Libya. NATO's real goal is the defence of a waning US hegemony and a unipolar world system. That's what NATO exists for. Any discussion of that is silenced, chilled in this land of free speech. The war in Ukraine, NATO is loving it. Like the US, the Russian economy is dominated by monopoly capital. Both countries are run by oligarchs. Now we have a US-NATO proxy war against Russia and Ukraine. Two factions of capitalist imperialism waging war against each other, with millions of workers caught in between. A survey by the European Council on Foreign Relations showed that the vast majority of European citizens want peace rather than promoting a war that punishes Russia. But NATO never wants peace. What I want to know is, what does the EU really want?
So that's what NATO is. And they're not a defensive organization. They're committing terrorism for economic gain and U.S. hegemony all over the world. And here, NATO has expanded. So when Germany was allowed to reunite, the promise that the Americans gave to Russia was that we wouldn't expand NATO. Well, this is a great illustration that shows you how much we actually have expanded NATO since 1990. So over here, it gives you the year, and it shows you how they've expanded, right? So this is what NATO was then. Let's start it again. This is what NATO was then, and now watch it start growing. So look at all the countries. Turkey, Romania, I don't even know, so Hungary, Georgia, Poland. Is that Georgia? What is this? I can't even read it. Is that
what's wrong with a force for good in the world expanding and expanding?
So right up on Russia's border. And now here's Ukraine. They want to put Ukraine into a military alignment with the United States. Could you imagine if they wanted to put Mexico into a military alignment and have Russian military bases in Mexico?
But
we wouldn't put up with it.
But because that's a bad country. We're the force of good in the world. Didn't you know that?
Also, just one more thing. CIA Director William Burns admitted in 2008 that the NATO expansion to Ukraine crosses Moscow's red lines and could split the country into two, leading to violence or even civil war, which would force Russia to decide whether to intervene. Of course, we've all known this, but none of the news agencies, MSNBC, CNN, Fox, they're not going to report this to you. New York Times, the Washington Post, they're not going to tell you what's going on. This is what's going on. NATO has provoked this through many different things that they did. One of them was NATO expansion. Another one was a coup in Ukraine. And now Sean Penn is out there saying we need to slaughter more Ukrainians because that's all what he said is going to do. And this is a great meme. It says, if the guy on the right, meaning Putin, triggers you, but these criminals on the left don't, congratulations, you've been successfully mind controlled by the TV media and Hollywood. Because these are all war criminals who wrecked our country for corporations and murdered other people all around the world. This guy dropped more bombs than that guy.
Look at these old pro wrestlers after the show, just hanging out.
It's all exactly what it is.
Kayfabe.
I like this. At least Trump is no longer president. I know, right?
I don't want to live in a world like that where he's
That's
president.
right. They don't care if we have a nuclear war as long as we don't have Trump as president. Sean Penn told you not to worry about a nuclear war.
Don't be overcautious about it.
Don't be too cautious about it.
1,000 East
Sean Penn has
Palestines.
lost his fucking mind. If you want to see my stand-up special, become a member at jimmydore.com. It's only $10, and come see our live stand-up comedy in Los Angeles, Palm Springs, Milwaukee, St. Paul, Honolulu, Northampton, Massachusetts, Syracuse, Cohoes, New York, Hartford, and more.